What if I told you some of the most powerful medicines on Earth aren't hidden inside high-tech laboratories, but have been quietly growing in nature for thousands of years? Think about it. Before pharmacies, before prescriptions, before synthetic pills, humans survived and even thrived using nothing but plants, not random guesses, but remedies tested over generations. And here's where it gets interesting. Modern science, equipped with advanced tools, clinical trials, and chemical analysis, is now confirming something shocking. Many of these ancient plants actually work, not just a little, but sometimes just as effectively or even better than modern drugs. Today, you're about to discover 20 ancient plants that could completely change the way you see health. And trust me, some of these will surprise you, because number 17, it was once so valuable, it was traded like gold. And today, research shows it can regulate blood sugar in a powerful way. And number 20 might be one of the most scientifically backed heart-protective foods on the planet. So stay with me, because this isn't just history. This is knowledge you can actually use. Before we dive in, make sure you hit subscribe, because every week we uncover hidden health knowledge that most people were never taught. No hype, no fluff, just facts that can change how you live. All right, let's get into it. Arrow 1. Aloe vera, the skin healer. Let's start with something simple, something almost everyone has seen, but very few people truly understand. Aloe vera. Most people think of it as that gel you use after a sunburn. You apply it, it cools the skin, and that's it. But that's just scratching the surface. This plant has been used for over 4,000 years. Ancient Egyptians called it the plant of immortality. Why? Because they noticed something unusual. Whenever aloe was applied to wounds, they healed faster, cleaner, with less scarring. At the time, they didn't know why, but today, science does. Aloe vera contains over 75 active compounds, including vitamins, enzymes, amino acids, and powerful anti-inflammatory agents. But here's the real secret. It doesn't just soothe the skin, it actively stimulates tissue repair. That means it helps your body rebuild itself. Even modern hospitals use aloe-based treatments for burns and post-surgical healing. Think about that. A plant that's been sitting quietly in homes for centuries is still being used in advanced medicine today. Simple, accessible, and incredibly powerful. Now let's move to something more unexpected. Frankincense. Most people associate it with incense, or maybe ancient rituals. But here's what they don't realize. This resin is one of the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory substances ever discovered. It comes from the sap of certain trees, and when that sap hardens, it forms these golden, tear-shaped crystals. Ancient civilizations didn't just burn it for fragrance. They used it as medicine, for pain, for swelling, for chronic conditions. And now, science has caught up. Frankincense contains compounds called boswellic acids. These compounds do something very specific. They target inflammation at its source, not just masking pain, but actually reducing the biological process behind it. Modern studies show it may help with joint pain, arthritis, asthma, gut inflammation. And here's what's even more interesting. Unlike many pharmaceutical anti-inflammatories, it doesn't come with the same level of side effects. No harsh impact on the stomach, no long-term damage risks in the same way. Which raises a question. Were ancient people really primitive? Or were they just observing things we're only now beginning to understand? Now here's things get even more fascinating. Another resin, but with a completely different role. Myrrh. If frankincense was used to calm inflammation, myrrh was used to fight infection. For centuries, it was applied directly to wounds, cuts, scrapes, open injuries. Why? Because people noticed something. Wounds treated with myrrh were less likely to get infected. They healed cleaner and faster. Today, science confirms that myrrh has strong antibacterial and antifungal properties. In fact, some studies show it can even work against certain resistant bacteria. That's a big deal because antibiotic resistance is one of the biggest modern health challenges. And yet, this ancient remedy may offer part of the solution. But here's something most people don't expect. Myrrh tastes extremely bitter, almost unpleasant. And that's exactly the point. Many of its active compounds, the ones that fight microbes, are responsible for that bitterness. It's a reminder of something important. Not all effective medicine is comfortable. Sometimes the things that work best aren't the easiest to take. Now let's talk about something much more familiar. Olives, or more specifically, olive oil. You've probably heard it's healthy, but most people don't realize just how powerful it really is. In ancient times, olive oil wasn't just food, it was medicine. It was used on the skin, on wounds, in diets designed for strength and longevity. And today, it's one of the most researched health foods on the planet. Study after study shows that high-quality olive oil can reduce inflammation, improve cholesterol levels, protect against heart disease. But here's the key. It's not just about fat. It's about what's inside that fat. Olive oil is rich in polyphenols, natural compounds that protect your cells from damage. They act like internal shields, reducing oxidative stress inside your body, which is one of the main drivers of aging and disease. This is one of the reasons the Mediterranean diet, rich in olive oil, is consistently linked to longer life and lower rates of heart disease. So when ancient people called it liquid gold, they weren't exaggerating, they were observing. Now let's talk about a plant that most people have never even heard of, hyssop. It's not popular today. You won't find it trending on social media, but historically, it was incredibly important. Hyssop was often used for purification, especially for the lungs and respiratory system. People would brew it into teas or inhale it through steam, and they noticed something. It helped clear congestion, made breathing easier, reduced irritation. Now, modern research shows that hyssop contains compounds that fight bacteria, reduce inflammation, support respiratory health, which explains why it worked. But here's the interesting part. Some of the most effective remedies in history are the ones we've forgotten. Not because they stopped working, but because they were replaced. Sometimes, progress doesn't mean better, it just means different. By the way, which one has surprised you the most so far? Be honest, how many of these did you already have at home without realizing how powerful they are? Drop a comment below. I read every single one, and I'm curious what stands out to you. Alright, because coming up next, we're getting into plants that don't just heal the outside, but transform your body from the inside out. And some of them you probably eat every single day. Let's continue with something you've probably eaten before, but never thought of as medicine. Figs. Soft, sweet, simple. But in ancient times, they were used for something completely different. Not just food, but skin repair. People would crush figs into a paste and apply them directly to the skin. Boils, inflammation, even minor infections, and they noticed something strange. The skin began to break down damaged tissue and rebuild faster. At the time, it seemed almost mysterious, but today, science explains it. Figs contain natural enzymes that help break down dead or damaged cells. Think of it like a gentle, natural exfoliation, but happening at a deeper biological level. And that's not all. Internally, figs are packed with fiber, which means they support digestion, gut health, and regularity. So this is one of those rare plants that works both outside and inside the body. A quiet multitasker. Now this one, ancient cultures didn't just use it, they revered it. Pomegranate. It symbolized life, fertility, even immortality. And for a long time, that sounded more like mythology than science, until researchers took a closer look.
What they found was incredible. Pomegranates are loaded with antioxidants, specifically compounds called punicolagens. These are so powerful that some studies show pomegranate juice contains more antioxidant activity than green tea. Let that sink in. More than green tea. So what does that actually mean for your body? It means protection against oxidative stress, against cellular damage, against the slow wear and tear that leads to aging and disease. Modern studies show pomegranates can improve blood flow, lower blood pressure, support heart health. And here's something even more interesting. They may help protect the lining of your blood vessels, which plays a huge role in preventing heart disease. So when ancient civilizations treated this fruit like something sacred, they might not have been exaggerating. They were observing something real, something science is only now catching up to. Now let's shift from food to protection. Cedar. Not something you eat, but something ancient people relied on in a completely different way. Preservation. They used cedar wood to store important items, food, clothing, even sacred objects. Why? Because things stored with cedar lasted longer. They resisted decay. They weren't destroyed by insects. At the time, it's probably felt almost magical. But now, we know exactly what was happening. Cedar contains natural compounds that are toxic to bacteria, fungi, and insects. In other words, it creates a protective environment, a natural defense system. Modern research confirms that cedar oil has strong antimicrobial properties. Even today, it's used in natural insect repellents, skin treatments, and preservative solutions. Think about that. Nature didn't just create healing plants, it created protection systems too, and humans learned how to use them. Now here's one that proves something important. Power doesn't always come in large packages. Mustard seeds are tiny, almost insignificant in size, but their effects, anything but small. In ancient medicine, mustard seeds were used to create warming pastes. These were applied to the chest to help with congestion or to the body to improve circulation. And when people used them, they felt heat, not surface-level warmth, but deep, penetrating heat. At the time, it was just how it works, but now we understand why. Mustard seeds contain compounds that stimulate blood flow. They activate circulation and help the body move things more efficiently, including mucus, toxins, and buildup. That's why they were so effective for respiratory issues. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Modern studies suggest mustard compounds may also have anti-cancer properties. Now that doesn't mean it's a cure, but it does show something important. Even the smallest natural substances can have complex, powerful effects on the body. However, this is one plant that comes with a warning. Used incorrectly, it can irritate the skin because it's strong. Which brings us back to an important idea. Natural doesn't always mean gentle. It means powerful, and power needs to be used wisely. Now let's end this section with something simple, something almost everyone knows. Mint. You've tasted it in gum, in tea, in toothpaste. It feels fresh, cooling, almost instantly soothing. But here's what most people don't realize. That cooling sensation isn't just a feeling, it's a biological effect. Mint, especially peppermint, contains a compound called menthol, and menthol does something very specific. It relaxes the muscles of the digestive tract. That's why mint has been used for centuries to treat nausea, indigestion, stomach cramps. And today, science fully backs this up. Peppermint oil is now commonly used to help manage IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. It reduces discomfort, relaxes the gut, improves digestion. And here's the fascinating part. Something as simple as a leaf can influence how your internal organs function. No lab required, no complex processing, just nature doing what it's always done. Quick question for you. How many of these are you already using without even realizing their full potential? Because that's the pattern here. These aren't rare, exotic substances. They're everyday plants with hidden depth. Drop a comment below. Which one surprised you the most so far? And if you've actually tried any of these, I want to hear your experience. Because in the next section, things get even more interesting. We're moving into plants that don't just support your body, but actively influence blood sugar, metabolism, immunity, and one of them has been called nature's antibiotic. Another quietly affects your body's energy systems every single day, and most people use them without ever thinking twice. Now we're stepping into more intense territory. Plants that aren't just helpful, but powerful enough to demand respect. Rue. If you've never heard of it, that's not surprising. It's not commonly used today, and there's a reason for that. Rue is bitter, very bitter, and historically it was used in extremely small amounts. Ancient healers didn't use this casually, they used it carefully, for inflammation, for digestive issues, and even for certain infections. But here's the interesting part. Modern science confirms that rue contains active compounds that interact strongly with the body, not mildly, not gently, but noticeably, which explains why it worked, and also why it could be dangerous if misused. This plant teaches an important lesson. Not everything natural is automatically safe. Some remedies are powerful tools, and tools need knowledge to be used correctly. Ancient people understood this, they respected it, and maybe that's something we've lost over time. Now let's shift to something much more familiar. Coriander. You probably know it as a garnish, something sprinkled on food for flavor. But underneath that simple appearance, there's something much deeper going on. Coriander has been used for thousands of years to support digestion, but modern research has uncovered something more surprising. It may help regulate blood sugar. That's a big deal, because blood sugar isn't just about diabetes, it affects your energy, your mood, your cravings, and even your long-term health. Studies suggest coriander can improve insulin function, help lower blood glucose levels, support heart health. And here's what makes it fascinating. Most people are already eating it. They just don't realize what it's doing behind the scenes. It's a perfect example of hidden medicine, something small, doing something significant.
Now let's talk about another everyday spice, cumin. It's been used for thousands of years in cooking across multiple cultures. But like many of these plants, its real power goes beyond flavor. Modern research shows cumin may help improve digestion, support weight management, regulate blood sugar. But here's what's really interesting. It may actually influence your metabolism, the way your body processes energy, the way it burns calories, the way it stores fat. That's not a small effect. That's a foundational system in your body. And yet, it can be influenced by something as simple as a spice you sprinkle on food. This is where things start to shift, because you begin to realize health isn't just about big changes, it's about small inputs, repeated consistently. Now we get to one of the most powerful plants on this list, garlic. This one isn't subtle. It's strong, it's pungent, and it's impossible to ignore. But that intensity, that's exactly where its power comes from. Garlic has been used for centuries as a natural remedy for infections. Ancient soldiers even carried it into battle, not as food, but as protection against disease. And today, science backs it up. Garlic contains a compound called allicin, and allicin is incredibly potent. It has been shown to fight bacteria, combat viruses, support the immune system, lower blood pressure. In fact, some studies suggest garlic can be as effective as certain antibiotics in specific situations. Let that sink in. A natural substance with effects comparable to modern medicine. But here's the key detail most people miss. Garlic only activates its full power when it's crushed or chopped. That's when allicin is released. So even how you prepare it changes its effectiveness. It's not just what you use, it's how you use it. Now let's talk about something even more overlooked. Onions. They're everywhere, in almost every kitchen, used in countless dishes. And because they're so common, they're often underestimated.
But onions are loaded with a powerful compound called quercetin. Quercetin is an antioxidant, and not just any antioxidant, one that has been studied for its effects on inflammation, immune function, heart health. It helps your body fight stress at a cellular level, which means it supports your system in ways you can't immediately see, but definitely feel over time. Ancient cultures used onions constantly, not occasionally, not as a trend, but as a staple. And now it makes sense why. Because sometimes the most powerful things are the ones we've normalized. Let's pause for a second, because this is where things usually click for people. We're not talking about rare herbs anymore. We're talking about foods you probably already eat: garlic, onion, cumin, coriander. So here's the real question. Are you using them intentionally or just randomly? Because there's a difference. Drop a comment below. Which one do you use the most? And after hearing this, does it change how you see it? Now let's move into something a little more mysterious: balm resin. This isn't something you'll find in every kitchen, but historically, it was considered extremely valuable. It was extracted from certain trees and used as a healing agent, especially for wounds, inflammation, and skin damage. People applied it directly to the body, and over time, it built a reputation, not just as a remedy, but as a symbol of healing itself. Now, modern research on similar plant resins shows something interesting. They contain compounds that reduce inflammation, promote tissue repair, and protect against infection, which explains why these resins were so highly valued. They worked. And when something works consistently over time, it becomes more than just a treatment. It becomes a legacy. Now we're about to get into the final group, and this is where everything comes together. Because the next few plants don't just support your health, they directly influence major systems in your body: blood sugar, brain function, heart health, and one of them was once worth more than gold. Another is now being studied as a natural alternative to antidepressants, and the final one might be one of the most powerful heart protective foods ever researched.
Now we get to the one I mentioned earlier, cassia. This isn't just any spice. In ancient times, it was so valuable, it was traded like gold. Think about that. Not for taste, not for luxury, but because people believed it had real power. And now, science is starting to explain why. Cassia is closely related to cinnamon, but it has a stronger concentration of active compounds. Modern research shows it may improve insulin sensitivity, lower blood sugar levels, help regulate metabolism. And this matters more than most people realize, because blood sugar isn't just about diabetes. It affects your energy levels, your hunger, your fat storage, your long-term health. When your blood sugar is unstable, everything feels off. But when it's balanced, your body runs smoothly. So the fact that something as simple as a spice can influence that system is powerful. Ancient people didn't have glucose monitors, but they had observation. And clearly, they noticed something important. Now, let's take that one step further. Cinnamon. This is one of the most studied spices in the world. And unlike many health trends, this one actually holds up under scientific scrutiny. Cinnamon has been shown to stabilize blood sugar, reduce inflammation, support heart health. But what makes it truly interesting is how it works. Cinnamon interacts with your body at a metabolic level. It influences how your cells respond to insulin, which directly affects how your body processes energy. In simple terms, it helps your body use fuel more efficiently. And when your metabolism works better, everything else improves: energy, weight regulation, even mental clarity. And yet, this isn't some rare compound. It's something you can find in almost any kitchen. That's the pattern we keep seeing, isn't it? The most powerful tools are often the most accessible. Now, this one is different. Not about digestion, not about inflammation, but about something just as important:
Your mind. Saffron. It's one of the most expensive spices on Earth. Gram for gram, more valuable than gold in some cases. And for a long time, people thought that was just because it's hard to harvest, which is true, but not the whole story, because saffron does something remarkable. Modern studies show it may help with depression, anxiety, mood regulation, cognitive function. And here's where it gets really interesting. Some research suggests saffron may be comparable to certain pharmaceutical antidepressants. Let that sink in. A natural plant having similar effects to lab-developed medication. Now, that doesn't mean it replaces treatment, but it does raise an important question. How many natural compounds have we overlooked because they didn't come in a pill bottle? Saffron shows us something powerful, that mental health support can come from unexpected places, tiny threads with massive impact. And finally, we end with something simple, something familiar, something almost everyone has eaten: grapes. At first glance, they don't seem special, but inside grapes is a compound called resveratrol, and this compound has been studied extensively. Why? Because of its connection to heart health. Research shows resveratrol may reduce inflammation, improve blood circulation, protect blood vessels, support longevity. And here's something fascinating. It may help explain a well-known mystery. In certain regions of the world, people consume relatively rich diets, yet have surprisingly low rates of heart disease. One theory, their consistent intake of foods rich in resveratrol, including grapes. And this brings everything full circle, because it highlights something simple. Health isn't always about extreme changes. It's about consistent inputs. Small things, done regularly, that create long-term results. So what does all of this tell us? It tells us something most people never stop to consider. Ancient knowledge wasn't random. It wasn't guesswork. It was built on observation, on trial and error, on real-world results, repeated over generations. People didn't need microscopes to notice patterns. They saw what worked. They passed it down. And now, modern science is catching up, confirming, testing, and explaining what humans have known for thousands of years. These plants aren't magic. They're not instant cures, but they are powerful. And more importantly, they're accessible. Many of them are already in your kitchen, sitting there, waiting to be used with intention. So, now I want to ask you something. After seeing all of this, does it change how you look at food, at plants, at the things you use every single day? Because it should. If this opened your eyes, hit that like button, and in the comments, tell me which one of these surprised you the most, and which one are you actually going to start using. Make sure you subscribe, because we're just getting started. The more you understand your body, the less you have to rely on guesswork, and the more control you have over your health.